Welcome to Rockoli, YouTube's best channel for record collectors. We've got to talk about this.
Get ready for Rockoli, bringing music to you. Rockoli, rock and roll, metal and country too. Get ready for the record of the week. Get ready for Rockoli.
So this is Danzig Sings Elvis. It's Glenn Danzig's latest effort. It's a covers album, all tracks that were previously covered by Elvis. Glenn Danzig, long compared to Elvis's singing style, along with Jim Morrison, often called the evil Elvis. If you don't know, just real quick about Glenn Danzig, he's the founding member of the horror punk band The Misfits. Really good stuff. And then later on he would front a band called Samhain or Samhain, and later would do a kind of a hard rock blues metal band called Danzig. I pre-ordered this album prior to hearing any tracks. I was just excited to see Glenn Danzig's take on some of the Elvis tracks. In the liner notes, Danzig talks about how he's always admired Elvis, listened to him growing up. He noticed that a lot of artists weren't doing these tribute albums as much as they used to, and he felt it was time for him to do a tribute album to his favorite artist, one of his favorite artists. I went back and forth on making this video. I am very disappointed with this album, and I'm going to get into why, but I don't want to, my critique is not on, if you enjoy this album, hey, great. I'm glad you could find some positive in this, and I'd love to hear why you like it. For me, I can't get past the really poor production choices. I don't know how these instruments are being mic'd, but the clarity is very muffled. There's so much reverb on the vocals. It's very distracting. It seems like the intent maybe was to have it sound like he's performing in a 50s gymnasium, but it just comes off as cheap. And there's something to be said about lo-fi, and those Misfits records, definitely made on the cheap and dirty, but it gives a character to it. Glenn Danzig, he has access to the best studios, the best equipment, and the best musicians. So why he chooses to play these instruments himself, to use, I don't even know where this was recorded. I'm just having trouble understanding the choices, because the way that they've come together is not appealing to my ear. I was excited about this album, pre-ordered this album, and when I got it, there's no creativity at all to these covers. There's no Danzig spin on these. His voice and time is a grueling thing, and singing years of rock and roll punk music is not going to be easy on your voice. So I can't really knock Glenn for not having that power that he once had, but you don't have to have a very powerful voice to perform in an interesting or artistic way. And to me, there's just minimal effort put into this album. I look at examples of, Bob Dylan doesn't have the best voice, and especially in his older age, that I think fans call it the croak. But Dylan has worked around it and made his new voice work for him. And while Bob Dylan is nothing like Glenn Danzig, Dylan uses his songwriting and focuses on that strength, where Glenn's strength has always been his voice. Well, he is a good songwriter. Here, he's not able to use his songwriting because he's doing covers, so his voice is the one tool he has left. His voice has deteriorated to the point that it's just kind of a wisp. He does his best to emulate Elvis's tone and delivery, but he's off key at some points in this, out of time. The drumming, like I said, the musicianship on this is maybe what you would expect to find at your local bar. Maybe your neighbor is having a concert. And these are very simple songs, so I just don't understand why. Other than I just feel I have this sadness for Glenn in that he doesn't have anyone in his corner telling him how awful this sounds. The record label, Cleopatra, people involved with this, putting their name on this, I don't know how they're just not extremely embarrassed at this product. And I'm almost insulted that this was acceptable. As a fan, really unsettling to me, because it just seems they put minimal dollars, minimal effort to maximize cash. And that's what this feels like to me. It feels like a huge cash grab. And I just don't understand. Anyway, I like to keep these videos light and positive, but I was just so taken aback by this album. When he released the first track, I think it was One Night, which is probably the best track off here, although the reverb on the vocals is just sickening. When he released that prior to the release of the album, and it was getting a lot of hate, and I listened to it and was like, ugh. But I still had hope that it would be good. Maybe, it would make more sense once you listen to the rest of the album. But it's all the same. You have the mixing levels from track to track are horrendously different. It doesn't make any sense. So the loudness is off across the whole album. Like I said, timing off on the instruments. Glenn sings out of key with a wisp of a voice. And none of these tracks would I choose over any other cover of these Elvis tracks, and especially not over Elvis's renditions. I just don't get it. And anyway, I just wanted to take time and vent and say, if you come across this and you're curious, I don't recommend it. I don't recommend that you go listen to it now, because you'll never get that time back. It's bad. It's really, really bad. Alright, well that's it for this week, guys. I know it was more of a rant this week, but I'd love to know your thoughts. If you've given it a listen, I'd love to know what you think. If you are as offended by the production as I am, or maybe you find the charm in Glenn's effort with his Elvis covers album. Anyway, I'd love to know your thoughts, and you just had a healthy dose of Rockoli. I'll see you next time.